On a warm summer evening in Fort Collins, Colorado, the day was slowly folding itself into night. The golden glow of dusk softened the neat suburban neighborhood, casting long shadows across freshly mowed lawns. The faint smell of barbecue smoke drifted from a neighbor's patio, mixing with the sweetness of blooming petunias. Fireflies winked in and out of the gathering twilight while American flags hung lazily from porches. On one such lawn, a 10-year-old boy named Ethan Miller wrestled an oversized cardboard box across the grass. His hair was sun-bleached from days spent climbing trees and riding bikes, his sneakers scuffed from countless adventures. Bounding after him was his golden retriever, Buddy, whose cheerful panting and wagging tail made him the most loyal sidekick a boy could ask for. Behind them, the Miller family's two-story craftsman home stood proudly, its white trim and flower beds glowing in the last light of day, and on the porch swing a gentle breeze made it creak like an old friend. From the kitchen window, his mother Karen, busy preparing corn on the cob to go with dinner, paused to wave, smiling as she watched her son's imagination take flight in its latest form. Ethan set the cardboard box upright, cut open a flap with his safety scissors, and poked a paper towel tube through the top to serve as a telescope. Squinting with mock seriousness, he tilted the tube toward the sky, adjusting it as though he were working at NASA headquarters. Looking down at his dog with the air of a commander addressing his crew, he announced, "Tonight, Captain Ethan Miller is making contact with aliens. You, Buddy, are the first dog on Mars." The golden retriever answered only with happy panting and a thumping tail, as if fully prepared to take on the mission. And there, in that quiet Colorado neighborhood where adults busied themselves with talk of mortgages and coupons, Ethan was already traveling galaxies. For him, dreams were not bound to Earth or to the smallness of ordinary worries. His adventures began not with rockets but with cardboard, and his first flight was powered entirely by imagination. Later that evening, the Miller family gathered around the kitchen table, where the smell of roasted chicken, mashed potatoes, and warm cornbread filled the air. The wooden farmhouse table was a stage for every kind of conversation, serious, funny, and everything in between. Family photos lined the walls, including one of Grandpa Miller in his Air Force uniform, a reminder of the weight that dreams can carry through generations. Ethan, seated between his parents, explained his theories about space with the same energy that other kids might reserve for sports or video games. He waved a chicken drumstick like it was a pointer stick, lecturing on the possibilities of popcorn in zero gravity. His teenage sister Sophie rolled her eyes, scrolling through her phone, earbuds dangling as she muttered that he was literally the weirdest brother ever. His dad Tom, still in his plaid shirt and jeans after a day on the construction site, chuckled and pointed out that NASA once spent years inventing pens that could write upside down, so perhaps popcorn in space wasn't such a ridiculous thought. Karen teased her son with a laugh, reminding him of the time he tried to launch Buddy from the roof in a wagon, insisting that no more experiments of that kind would be tolerated. The table broke into laughter, even Sophie, though she tried to hide her smile. Around that dinner table, Ethan's outlandish ideas weren't dismissed. They were folded into the rhythm of family life, celebrated alongside the cornbread and jokes. Weeks later, the school gym buzzed with nervous chatter and the smell of waxed floors during the annual science fair. Folding tables lined with trifold poster boards showed everything from volcanoes spewing vinegar lava to neatly labeled electrical circuits. Parents sipped coffee from paper cups while judges in khakis and clipboards moved from project to project. Ethan stood proudly by his exhibit, his wrinkled NASA t-shirt stretched across his chest, his poster decorated with hand-drawn planets and construction paper pepperoni slices taped carefully in place. His title read boldly, "Life on Mars: How to Grow Pizza in Space." In the center of his table, a small fish tank held red sand and a plastic astronaut figurine, while a shoebox, greenhouse, with plastic wrap covered a set of Dixie cups filled with tomato seeds. But as Ethan began his presentation, the shoebox collapsed, spilling dirt and seeds across the table. Laughter rippled from nearby students, and Sophie, standing near the bleachers with her friends, covered her face in mortification. Ethan's cheeks burned, but he pressed on, telling the judge with conviction that alien cows could provide cheese while humans grew wheat and tomatoes on Martian soil. The judge bit back a smile, clearly amused. Ethan finished with as much courage as he could muster, his voice cracking but his eyes determined. For him, it wasn't about perfection, it was about daring to believe. Not long after, Ethan found himself at his grandfather's ranch-style house on the edge of town. The backyard smelled of cut grass and the charcoal of an old Weber grill, while cicadas hummed in the trees and fireflies blinked like tiny lanterns over the lawn. Grandpa Miller sat on the porch swing, wearing worn jeans, suspenders, and his beloved Air Force veteran cap, sharpening a pocket knife with slow, practiced strokes. Ethan sat cross-legged in the grass beside him, eyes lifted to the deepening night sky. Grandpa told him about the launch of Sputnik and how it had startled the world, pushing America to dream bigger until men walked on the moon. When Ethan asked if he had been scared, his grandfather admitted that he had been, but added with quiet wisdom, "Fear's just a shadow. Curiosity is the flashlight. If you let curiosity lead, you'll never stay in the dark too long." Ethan listened intently, his gaze fixed on a plane blinking across the stars. To him, it wasn't just a plane, it was the promise of what could be. In that backyard, under the hum of summer nights, he realized the sky was not a ceiling but an invitation. As summer deepened, Ethan's adventures grew bigger than cardboard boxes and backyard telescopes. On Saturday mornings, while most kids in the neighborhood played video games or biked to the ice cream shop, Ethan filled his backpack with duct tape, soda bottles, and old wires, declaring that he was conducting classified experiments. His best friend Jacob often tagged along, though with far less enthusiasm, more interested in the popsicles waiting back at the Miller house than in inventing propulsion systems. One sweltering afternoon, they set up in the driveway with 2-liter soda bottles, vinegar, and baking soda, Ethan's version of a rocket launch. The first bottle fizzed and sputtered, soaking both boys in a sticky mess. Jacob groaned while Ethan shouted, "That's just data. Failure is data." Neighbors chuckled from across the street as Ethan wiped soda from his forehead like a proud engineer, refusing to call it a mistake. In his mind, every fizz and spill was a step toward the stars. Life in Fort Collins moved with its own rhythm. Lawn sprinklers ticked back and forth in the evenings, kids sold lemonade at folding tables on corners, and the ice cream truck jingled its way down the streets just as fireflies began to appear. But Ethan's imagination colored everything differently. The sprinkler became a rotating satellite dish, the lemonade stand, a fuel station for weary space travelers. Even the chatter of cicadas buzzing from the trees at night became, to Ethan, the coded transmissions of alien civilizations. His sister Sophie shook her head at his running commentary, but his parents encouraged it, reminding him that even scientists were once kids who dared to believe ordinary things held extraordinary secrets. One night, a meteor shower was forecast, and Ethan convinced his family to drive out to Horsetooth Reservoir, a popular local spot where the city lights faded into the mountains. They piled into the family SUV, Buddy happily wedged between Ethan and Sophie in the back seat. When they arrived, dozens of families had already spread blankets across the rocky hillside, the smell of bug spray and camping lantern fuel filling the air. Children roasted marshmallows while parents passed around thermoses of coffee. Ethan lay back on a blanket, eyes wide, his heart racing with anticipation. The first streak lit the sky, white fire carving across the darkness. More followed, silver, gold, green, brief and brilliant. The crowd gasped and pointed, but Ethan was silent, almost reverent. To him, each falling star wasn't just a spectacle, it was a message, a reminder that the universe was alive and waiting. His father glanced at him and smiled, recognizing in his son the same wonder he had once felt as a boy. Karen wrapped a quilt around Ethan's shoulders as the night cooled, whispering, "Keep dreaming, sweetheart. The world needs people who look up instead of down." And under that star-streaked sky, Ethan promised himself he always would. As the new school year began, Ethan's cardboard rockets and soda bottle experiments turned into a new obsession, the school robotics club. The classroom smelled faintly of solder and chalk dust, wires sprawled across desks like spaghetti while students fiddled with circuit boards. At first, Ethan felt out of his depth. Other kids seemed more skilled, building motors that hummed smoothly while Ethan sputtered and died. But he refused to quit. He stayed after school, sketching designs in his notebook and testing gears until his hands were smudged with grease. His teacher, Mrs. Caldwell, admired his stubborn determination, telling him one afternoon, "You've got grit, Ethan. That's rarer than talent." Slowly, his work improved. By winter, his team's robot could follow a taped line across the floor, wobbling but persistent, just like him. When the team traveled to Denver for a competition, Ethan stood nervously in the noisy gymnasium as robots zipped across the floor, cheered on by families waving posters. His team didn't win, but when their robot successfully completed its final task, picking up a plastic cup without dropping it, Ethan felt a rush of pride so strong it erased every earlier failure. For him, it wasn't about trophies, it was proof that imagination, when joined with effort, could build something real. Years passed, and Ethan grew taller, his voice deeper, but the spark in his eyes never dimmed. He worked summer jobs mowing lawns and bagging groceries, saving every dollar for science kits and books about astronomy. His bedroom walls became a patchwork of star charts, mission posters, and sketches of spacecraft designs taped haphazardly next to his baseball caps and old science fair ribbons. His friends sometimes teased him, calling him Space Boy, but even they admitted his passion was contagious. In high school, while Sophie focused on cheer practice and social events, Ethan poured his energy into physics homework and late-night stargazing. On prom night, while classmates danced under disco lights, Ethan lay on the roof with Buddy, notebook in hand, charting the movement of Jupiter across the night sky. He wasn't lonely, he was exactly where he wanted to be. Eventually, the boy with the cardboard box grew into a young man standing on the threshold of adulthood. Graduation day dawned bright and clear, the Rockies outlined against a flawless blue sky. Families filled the football field bleachers, waving banners and snapping photos. Ethan walked across the stage in his cap and gown, shaking hands with teachers who had once doubted his scatterbrained projects but now spoke proudly of his persistence. His mother cried softly, his father clapped the loudest, and Sophie, now older and wiser, hugged him tightly afterward, whispering, "I always knew you'd do something big, little brother." Ethan grinned, diploma in hand, but his eyes kept drifting skyward. That summer, as fireflies returned to the Colorado nights and grills smoked with the smell of burgers and corn, Ethan packed his bags for college. He had been accepted to study aerospace engineering, a dream that began not in a laboratory or observatory but in a cardboard box on a lawn where a boy once declared his dog the first traveler to Mars. On his last night at home, he sat on the porch swing with Buddy at his feet and the stars overhead. His grandfather's words echoed in his memory, "Fear's just a shadow. Curiosity is the flashlight." Ethan whispered softly into the night, "I'm ready." And in that moment, the boy who had once squinted through a paper towel tube was no longer pretending. His imagination had carried him to the launchpad of his future, proving that the first flight of every great journey begins not with engines or metal, but with the courage to dream.
Like and subscribe if you want daily dose of happiness and motivation.